morning, Cornerstone. How you doing? It is so good to be with you today. Wasn't that an incredible worship time we had? Isn't our Jesus worthy of worship? Can you just thank Jesus one more time? He is so worthy. So I want you to think back on a memory of maybe one of the biggest surprises of your life. Not one of the bad ones. We've all had plenty of bad surprises. But I want you to think back on one of the good surprises. One of the biggest good surprises you've ever had. Or maybe it was that surprise party. Or maybe it was that surprise statement, I'm pregnant. Or maybe it was that gift that you really, really, really wanted, but in your wildest dreams you never thought you would get, and then you open the box and there it was. Get that memory, the biggest surprise you ever experienced. Get that in your mind right now. Hold it in your mind. And I want you to think about the emotions that you had. How did you feel? Do you remember the exhilaration and the excitement and the thrill and the joy and the happiness that it brought you? Do you remember the smile that it put on your face? See, I think what happens sometimes is when we're children, we have a lot of those experiences. And if we're not careful, sometimes as we grow older, we have less and less of them. And in some ways it makes sense because for most of us in here, well, we've celebrated scores of birthdays and scores of Christmases, but a child, it's all new and fresh to them, right? It's some of their firsts. You've probably heard the phrase, familiarity breeds contempt. And it might be a little harsh, and so let me lighten a little bit and say it this way. Familiarity, if we're not careful, can lead to a casual disinterest. See, what we sometimes need to do is maybe we need to just stop, to pause, and maybe just step back and look at that spouse that we've been married to for years or maybe decades and just feel once again the wonder and the awe and the surprise that we get to do life with them. Maybe what we need to do is just pause when we see that sunset. And I get it, you and I have seen hundreds of sunsets. But maybe we need to just pause and once again, be awed and wowed and surprised again by the beauty of that sunset. It's what we want to do with this series that we're launching this weekend, is we want to take this Christmas story that so many of us are familiar with, that so many of us have heard so many times, and we want to hold this Christmas story out and once again be surprised and awed and wowed by it because it's the greatest story ever told. Do you believe that? Do you believe it's the greatest story ever told? Yes, it is. It is. So if you have your Bibles, opened to Luke chapter 2, and let's be surprised again by this story. And in fact, we're going to be surprised in a new way because I think we're going to hear this story in a way that you've never heard it before. I want to invite out on the stage a friend of mine. He actually is a member here at Cornerstone. Would you give a warm Cornerstone welcome to Paul? Come on out, Paul. A little aloha there. Can you tell where Paul is from? Where's Paul from? Yeah, good.
Did my shirt give it away?
Yeah. In fact, you spent the first 25 years of your life in Hawaii, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. On what island?
I'm from Maui.
That's a rough life, isn't it?
And very rough. You know, rainbows, surf.
Yeah. Good. So what we're going to do today is we're going to hear the Christmas story again. We've probably all heard it, but I bet you've never heard it this way. Paul is going to read the Christmas story to us in Hawaiian Pidgin. But to give it more authenticity, we need to welcome someone else to the stage, Jordin Kaiser. Would you welcome Jordin Kaiser out? Yeah, a little ukulele, huh? So, this is where we're picking up the story. We're picking up the story when the shepherds are out in the field and the angels appear to them. That's where we're going to start reading the story. Now, when they're done, we need to give them a big thank you, but we have to do it Hawaiian style. So how do we give a cheer in Hawaiian?
How many parents and grandparents are here right now? Can I see a show of hands? Perfect. I assume you've all seen Moana, okay? There is a character in Moana named Maui, no relation, that does a big
All right. And we have to do it high pitched like that, right?
yes.
All right. Can we practice?
You ready? Let's try. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, they're awesome. They're good. All right. So, Christmas story, the way you've probably never heard it before. Let's get a little background ukulele going and go for it.
But the angels would say, brothers, no be scared. I here for tell you good things from the Lord above, that other brothers and sisters can feel good vibes. That on this day in King Kavika's town, there was a boy that was born that can take away all the bad stuff that's there going on. He is Christ that the Lord will send. And this is how you gonna find him. He is wrapped up in the kind cloth, laying inside the cow feeder.
The cow feeder. We got to hang on to that. Remember that. The cow feeder.
Right then, another angel had shown up with the first angel, and they were saying good things from the Lord up high. The Lord up high is awesome and pono, and he stay on top of the earth for tell other people and make them feel super cherry. Then the angels had decide and say, shoots, we're going back up there with God. And the sheep farmers had look at each other and say, hey brah, let's go Bethlehem like that and go check out and see what they was talking about. Let's go see Mary, Joseph, and go see the baby laying down inside a cow feeder.
The cow feeder. All right. All right. Hawaiian style on the count of three. We need to say thank you. 1, 2, 3. Yeah! Oh, that's awesome.
Mahalo.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, tell them thank you one more time. I bet you did not come to church on this chilly morning thinking you were going to hear Hawaiian Pidgin. But there you go. So, Luke chapter 2, here's what we want to do today. We're going to pretend that we've never heard this story before. We're going to pretend that this is all new for us, and we're going to read just a few verses. And what kind of assumptions would we make about this Jesus if we've never heard this story before? Maybe this will help us be surprised and awed and feel the wonder of the story once again. So Luke chapter 2, I'm going to start reading in verse 4. So Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and the line of David. So it says he went up to Bethlehem. It's actually south. He went south, but he went up in elevation. He had to go to Bethlehem because of the census being taken, okay? Verse 5 tells us that Mary, his wife, went with him. So skip down to verse 6. While they were there, the time came for her baby to be born. Okay, remember, we're pretending we've never heard this before. All we know so far is there's some dude named Joseph and a woman named Mary, and she's about to give birth. That's all we know about the story. Okay, verse 7. She gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in the cow feeder. Yeah. Placed him in the cow feeder, a manger, a feeding trough, a place where animals drip their saliva and snot while they're eating. That's where this baby was placed because there was no guest room available for them. Now, the author Luke is going to leave this scene in the manger, and he's going to go out to a nearby field where there's some shepherds, and this angel all of a sudden appears, and he begins to talk to these shepherds about this Messiah that has come. But look what he says. We're skipping down to verse 12. It says this, the angel says to the shepherds, this will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a cow feeder, a manger. A feeding trough, a place where animals drip their snot and saliva while they're eating. See, if we had never heard this story before, and we're going to just make assumptions off of the few verses that we just read, who is this Jesus? Well, we might assume, he must have been born to a very poor family. I mean, Mary and Joseph must have been really poor because they're putting him in a cow feeder, a manger. We might assume, maybe this Mary and Joseph were on the run, like maybe they're running for their lives, because, why else would you be in like this barn-like structure and putting a newborn baby in a cow feeder? I think I know what we wouldn't assume. If we've never heard the story before, we wouldn't assume that little baby in the feeding trough in the cow feeder was a king. We probably wouldn't assume that he wasn't just a king, but he was the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, that he wasn't just the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, but as Revelation 19 says, the King of all kings and the Lord of all lords. We probably wouldn't assume that little baby in that feeding trough, in that cow feeder, was the one that Isaiah said sits in the throne room of God, or in the throne room, and the angels are circling around him constantly saying, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty." We certainly wouldn't assume that that little baby was the one that Paul writes about in Philippians 2, that someday every knee will bow and every tongue confess on earth and above the earth and under the earth that he is Lord. We wouldn't assume that that's him. We certainly wouldn't assume that this is the most important birth in the history of humanity, not a baby that's lying in a manger. We wouldn't assume that that's royalty in a trough. We'll skip down to verse 16, and these shepherds begin to head into Bethlehem. It says, so they hurried off, and they found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in the cow feeder, the manger, the feeding trough, the place where animals drip their saliva and snot while they're eating. That's where you're going to find this baby. Now, don't miss the fact that Luke has mentioned this 3 times. 3 times Luke has mentioned in this story that this baby Jesus, was placed in a manger. Clearly, to Luke, that's an important part of the story. 3 times he's made it clear that the journey of Jesus began in a manger. I wonder if one of the reasons that you and I have sometimes lost our wonder and our awe and our surprise of this story is that we've cleaned up the manger so much. We've cleaned it up so much that if you go into your home or my home and we see our pretty little manger scene, we have a manger scene that's been handed down through several generations. And if you go there, it's this beautiful little manger scene, but it wasn't really like that. In fact, if you want to make the manger scene a little more authentic, go home, or when you set it up in the next couple of days or weeks, you need to take the wise men and you need to move them and put them in another room, because if you read the story carefully, it doesn't appear that they were actually there on that first night. They came later on. I won't go into the details of it, but they weren't there, so you got to put them in another room and then take the angel that is like fluttering over baby Jesus. You take it, and that's apparently how angels flutter, right? So you need to take that angel and go put him out in the backyard or something, because the angel actually appeared to the shepherds out in the fields, but there's no indication that there was a visible angel. There were certainly angels there, but they weren't visible. So now you're going, well, hold on. You just took my manger scene, my beautiful manger scene, and you made it awful simple. I mean, there's just Mary, Joseph, the shepherds, and Jesus in a manger. Yep. It's pretty simple. In fact, if you want to make it more authentic, on your way home, stop by Lowe's or Home Depot and get some fertilizer. I'm talking the manure fertilizer. And take it home and sprinkle a little bit of it around in your manger scene. And if you have one of those full-size ones in your yard, take a whole bag and just dump it out there. And then as you're watching your neighbors walk by in the next couple of weeks, and they're like, what is that smell? Just kind of call out, hey, it's more authentic. This is the way it was. See, I think one of the reasons, again, that we've lost our surprise and awe and wonder of this story is we've cleaned it up. And Luke, when he was writing it, 3 times is trying to remind us where Jesus' journey started. Don't clean it up. In fact, use your God-given imagination right now. And maybe for some of you, you want to close your eyes, because I want us to go back 2,000 years. And I want us to use our senses, our God-given imaginations, and we're going to take a little journey through this manger scene. And I want you just to imagine what it might have been like. And so when you walk in, smell. Can you smell the manure? I want you to take your hand and run it over the rough timber of the door. I want you to run it over the rough timber of the rails separating the animals. Be careful that you don't get a splinter. I want you to take your hand and I want you to run it over the coolness of the stones, maybe the only seats that Mary and Joseph had. I want you to run it over the coolness of what might have actually been a stone manger, a hollowed out rock. Can you hear the sounds? Can you hear the little coos of a newborn baby? Yeah. Can you come back next service? That was so perfect. There's a future on the stage for that little one. So can you hear the coos of the little baby, the newborn baby, maybe the cries of the newborn baby? Can you hear the animals? I grew up near a farm. Can you see the exhausted mother? Can you see the tired father? Can you see the little cone-headed, wrinkled newborn baby? Oh, don't clean up this manger scene. That's where we miss some of the awe and the wonder and the surprise of it. See, a modern-day equivalent of what the angels tell the shepherds in the field when they say, this will be a sign, you will find him wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger. A modern-day equivalent of that might be, this will be a sign, you will find him wrapped in cloths and lying in a porta potty. What? 3 times Luke tells us a manger, the Calfida. Why? Why the manger? Why the manger? Why, of all the places that Jesus could start his journey, that? In fact, let me make the question even deeper by backing up 700 years from the story of Jesus' birth. 700 years before, a prophet named Micah, he wrote one of the books that we have in our Older Testament. In Micah chapter 5, verse 2, he prophesies that the coming Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. Now, I'm going to be a little silly, borderline sacrilegious here, but there's a purpose in it, okay? That means that God had 700 years to plan for this event. 700 years, that's a long time to plan for something. If you backed up 700 years from where we're sitting in history right now, it would be another 200 years before Columbus even discovered the Americas. If you backed up 700 years from where we're sitting in history, it would be another 500 years before the Declaration of Independence would be signed. If you backed up 700 years in history, you would find William Wallace and Robert the Bruce fighting for Scotland's independence. 700 years is a long time. And from the time that the prophet Micah, by the Spirit of God, says the Messiah will be born in Bethlehem, God has 700 years to plan for this. Listen to verse 12 again. This will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a Calfida, a manger. This will be a sign to you. 700 years, and that's the best sign you could come up with, God? I mean, God has come up with some pretty cool signs. The rainbow, that's a sign. Go back in the very beginning, the first book of the Bible, God says every time you see a rainbow, it's a sign to you that I will not destroy the earth with a worldwide flood. That's a pretty cool sign, isn't it? How about a bush that's burning but not burning up? That was one of the signs he gave. That was pretty cool. I would have loved to be with Moses and walking through the wilderness, and all of a sudden you look over and you're like, hey, that bush is on fire, but it's not burning up. That's a pretty cool sign, isn't it? How about King Hezekiah in 2 Kings chapter 20, where God's sign was his shadow moving backwards? So you're standing there, the sun is casting your shadow on a wall, and all of a sudden you don't move, but your shadow starts walking backwards. That's a pretty cool sign, isn't it? God had 700 years. And this is the sign. You find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a Calfida. See, if I were God, and aren't you glad I'm not? But if I were God, I would come up with a way cooler sign than a manger. I mean, I would do something like this. And so when the shepherds are saying this, verse 12, it would be a little different. If I were God, it'd be like, and this will be your sign. Follow the voice of God. And suddenly, from the heavens, there would be this voice of God, which apparently sounds like Morgan Freeman, right? And this voice would come down from the heavens and direct them. That would be a pretty cool sign, right? Or maybe this, and this will be a sign to you. And all of a sudden, all the sheep stand up and start talking. That would be a cool sign, right? Or this, this will be a sign to you, and all of a sudden the earth starts opening. And it's just follow the crack into Bethlehem, and they'll take you to baby Jesus. That would be a cool sign. 700 years. And the best you could do, God, is a manger. Now, I'm being silly, of course, because I'm trying to make the point that this was no accident. It's not like when Mary and Joseph went up and knocked on the innkeeper's door and the innkeeper opened it up. Sorry, there's no room. That God was up in the heavens going, oh, whoa, I didn't see that coming. Angels, get in here quick. We got to come up with plan B. Plan B, what do we do? How about a manger? Oh, that's a good idea. No, it wasn't like that. It didn't work like that. This was on purpose. And Luke is trying to get us to understand that. So why the manger? Why the manger? Well, the answer to this question has deep implications for you and I. Why the manger? First, we understand it was on purpose. It was intentional. Jesus started his journey in Decaltheta, in a feeding trough, in a place where animals drip their snot and saliva while they eat. Why did he do that? Well, one of the reasons is it's a reminder, or should be a reminder to you and I, how far Jesus had to stoop to save you and I. From the very beginning of the story, you and I should be reminded of how far Jesus had to stoop to save you and I. See, part of the message of the manger is that Jesus' life started low and ended even lower. Think about it. His life starts, they wrap him in cloths and lay him in a feeding trough. His life ends, they take his dead body off a cross, they wrap it in cloths and lay it in a tomb. Jesus' life started low and ended even lower. A part of the message of the manger is to remind you and I how far Jesus had to stoop to save us. Oh, Cornerstone, that we would be surprised and awed and wondered again by this story. A story that I know I've heard it so many times and you've heard it so many times, but may we never forget that what we're celebrating is the fact that the King of all kings and Lord of all lords stooped so low to save us, so low that his journey started in a feeding trough and ended in a tomb. Why the manger? Part of the answer on why the manger is also found in one of the names of Jesus. It's actually only used once, but we sing about it all the time at Christmas. Emmanuel. Now, Emmanuel literally means God with us. A God with us. Not us with God. God with us. What's the difference? Oh, there's a big difference. See, part of the message of the manger is that we didn't go to God, but Jesus came to us. Emmanuel, God with us. We didn't go to God, he came to us. And he came to us in the middle of the muck and mire and manure of our lives. He came to us in the middle of the brokenness of our lives. God with us. God with us in our poverty. God with us in our brokenness. God with us in our messiness. God with us in our addictions. God with us when we're running from him. God with us when we're running to him. God with us when we have these heavenly moments, and God with us when we have these hellish moments. See, you and I didn't go to him. He came to us. And he came to us in the middle of the brokenness of our lives, in the muck and mire and manure of our lives. See, part of the message of the manger is that you don't need to fix your life and clean it all up and then go to God. In fact, don't miss this. It's actually anti-gospel to try to fix everything and then go to Jesus. Let me say that again. It's actually anti-gospel to try to fix everything and then come to Jesus. Now, gospel is kind of a big word, so let me explain it. It's a churchy word that we use a lot in the church, but you need to understand what it means because the Newer Testament uses the word gospel all the time. Gospel literally just means good news. So in the Newer Testament or in the Bible, when it talks about the gospel, it's talking about the good news of Jesus. The good news of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. It's the good news that Jesus left his throne in heaven and came to earth. It's the good news that we serve a God who understands the frailty of humanity because he lived as a human. It's the good news that Jesus took all of your sins and all of my sin on himself on the cross. Isn't that good news? It's the good news that Jesus didn't stay dead, but 3 days later he came out of the tomb, proving that he had power over sin and death. That's the gospel. And it's actually anti-gospel. It's actually anti-gospel for you and I to try to fix everything and then come to God. Here's why it's anti-gospel. Paul wrote this in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 21. Paul was writing to Jesus followers in a town called Corinth, and he said, God made him, Jesus, who had how much sin? No sin, to be sin for who? Us. So that in him we might become the righteousness of God. See, it's anti-gospel to try to fix everything and then go to him. Because first of all, you can't fix everything. But second of all, what we're told is he came to us and he already fixed it. It's already fixed. It's anti-gospel to try to fix everything and then come to Jesus because of what Paul wrote to Jesus followers in Rome, in Romans chapter 5, verse 8. But God demonstrated his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. While we were sinners, Christ died for us. While we were his enemies, Christ died for us. While we were in our addictions, Christ died for us. While we were running from God, Christ died for us. See, part of the message of the manger is that it's not us with God, Emmanuel, God with us. We didn't go to him, he came to us. And he came to us in all of our brokenness. Why? 700 years of planning. Why does he choose the sign of a manger? Because it should be a reminder to you and I how low he had to stoop to save us, and that we didn't go to him, he came to us. So 3 months ago, I was flying to go on vacation and to actually go visit our new grandson that was just born. And so I was in one of those moods. I'm an extrovert, so I normally like people, and I really like to talk to people. But you know, even extroverts, sometimes you're just done with people. All the introverts in here are going, oh, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. And I learned something from you introverts. I learned that when you get on a plane and you don't want to talk to people, you just avoid eye contact, right? So you don't look at whoever you're going to sit next to. You just put your bags up there. You don't look at them, and you put your earphones in, right? That's right? Did I learn the secret, right, from you introverts? So I got on this airplane. I'm tired. I'm wore out. I'm exhausted. I don't want to talk with anybody. I want to deal with anybody. So I don't make eye contact. I sit down. I put my earphones in right away. Well, there's a husband and a wife sitting right next to me, and he's one of those really loud guys, like everybody 10 rows in front of us and 10 rows behind us could hear everything that he said. And apparently he didn't know how this little game worked. Because I have my earphones in, I'm looking straight ahead, I haven't made any eye contact, and I just want to go to sleep. I just want to read a book or something. And he kept elbowing me, like he elbowed me, so I take the earphone out, but I still wouldn't look at him. I wouldn't make eye contact. It was kind of like I'm saying, I'll answer one question type thing, So I pull the earphone out, and he'd be like, bro, so that's kind of how he was. Bro, dude, like, where are you from, man? And I'd be like, I'm from here, Phoenix. A little bit later, okay, pull it back out. So this goes on for like 20 minutes or so. We're finally getting ready to take off, and then he elbows me again. So I take out one of my earphones, and he goes, so bro, what do you do? What do you do for work? Yeah, so thankfully I hadn't completely destroyed my witness because I wasn't really rude to him or anything. But I actually thought this was going to work in my benefit because I've learned that when you tell someone that you're a pastor, they usually just be quiet after that. I don't know why. This is usually what happens on an airplane. So what do you do for work? I'm a pastor. Oh. And then they open up and start reading a book. So I kind of thought, oh, cool, that's what's going to happen, all right? So I'm a pastor. And he goes, I knew it, I could tell. I could feel the spirit, man. Like, dude, I could just tell there was something there, man. So then I just take the other earphone out because I realize I'm done. This is done. I just put the earphones in my lap, and then he starts to say, oh, man, this is why I could feel the Spirit, because I have him too. I mean, I grew up in the church, and I knew Jesus, and I went to this church in Southern California. He named the church, and I know the church. It's a great church. And he goes, when I was in the youth group, and I was really involved, and, man, I loved God. And then he got really serious. But I got out of high school, and I kind of quit going to church, and I joined the military, and I'd done some bad things, and I started to I started to jump in to encourage him, and he interrupted me. He goes, no, you don't understand. I've done some really, really, really bad things. And then I felt like God was just telling me that he needed to be reminded of something. So I looked at him, I said, listen, I know I'm not telling you anything you didn't hear when you were younger, but maybe you just need to be reminded of this truth again. It does not matter how far you've run from God. It does not matter how low you've gone. It does not matter what sins you've committed. Right now, Jesus is standing with his arms open wide. And he wants to welcome you. He had tears just running down his face. See, that man on that plane needed to hear the message of the manger. The message of the manger that says you don't need to clean your life up and fix it all and then go to him. No, he came to us in our muck and mire and manure of our lives. I needed to be reminded of the message of the manger on that airplane and to be reminded again that God will sometimes use us even when we act like idiots. Even when we're at that point where I'm like, I don't want to be used by you, God. I just want a nap. And we serve such a great God that he'll be like, no, I'm going to use you right now. Aren't you glad we serve a God that loves us this much? Aren't you glad we serve a God who loves us so much that this Christmas story we celebrate, oh, that we would be in awe and wonder and surprise of this story, that the Christmas story starts 3 times reminding us that Jesus' story and life started in a Calfida, a manger. So here's what I'm asking us to do. In the next couple of weeks, that manger scene that you have at home, maybe take that little manger and just pick it up, brush the manure that you put on it, brush that off, and then just place it in your hand, and then just look at that manger and just meditate on it. And remind yourself of the message of the manger. Be surprised by that message again, that Jesus started his journey low and ended it even lower. That he stooped so low to save you and I. Be reminded of the message of the manger that says, you don't have to fix everything and come to me. Jesus is saying, I came to you in the muck and mire and manure of your life. Oh, that we would never, never lose sight of that truth. Jesus, we love you. And what else can we do but just say thank you to you? When we're reminded of what we celebrate at Christmas, that you came to earth, but you started in a manger. What else can we do but just say thank you? God, I pray that you would just give us a renewed awe and wonder and surprise at this story. That you loved us that much, that you did that for us, God. We love you, Jesus. Amen.